Broadcasting from the Hip Hop Weekly studios, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Civic Cipher, where our mission is to foster allyship, empathy, and understanding. I am your host, Ramses Ja. Big shout out to Q Ward, who is in the City of Angels, paving the way for more opportunities for growth for this show. But he will be back in the studio with us next week. But have no fear, because we are going to have a conversation we've been looking forward to for some time. Today, we are joined by a gentleman who knows how to break down the legal system, the criminal justice system in this country. And with recent headlines, with so many things being litigated, with so many people suing to keep their jobs, with so many people concerned about what's going to happen with the country and what Democrats are doing and what Republicans are doing and how things have been tied up in courts, we wanted to take a moment to break down exactly what all that means for folks who might not be intimately familiar with the judicial process in this country. And so today we are joined by the Honorable Judge Cody Williams. He is a former council member for the City of Phoenix and a Justice of the Peace for Maricopa County. He served as a council member for 8 years and as a judge for 15 years. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
And, I'm very much looking forward to breaking down again what the what is in terms of what judges do, what constitutions work, and what settings and so forth. But also we're going to take an examination, a critical examination of some of the goings on with respect to this present administration, and so that and so much more to stick around for, so that we can start to make heads or tails of our path forward. But before we get too far gone, let's start as always with some Ebony Excellence. And today's Ebony Excellence, we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to shout out Joy Ann Reid. And for those that don't know, MSNBC canceled her show, but Q and I wanted to shine a spotlight on her fantastic show. In the meantime, we are going to uplift this incredible woman and highlight her excellence. So again, a little different. As I mentioned, her show is recently canceled by MSNBC, but she put out a statement, and I'll share a bit. Quote, "I just want to say thank you to everyone who has reached out with kindness and encouragement, both personally and in these social media streets. So very proud of the Read Out team, who are truly family, and all of our supporters and friends. Be sure to follow her on all social media platforms, Joy Ann Reid, JoyAnnReid. And if you want to let MSNBC know how you feel about this move, you can let them know at 212-684-4444. Press 1 and 2. Again, that's 212-684-4444. Press prompts 1 and 2. And if you don't know, who you're following, Joy Ann Reid, she graduated from Harvard University in 91. She was a 2003 Knight Center for Advanced Journalism Fellow. In 2017, she ranked 4th among Twitter's top tweeted news outlets and was the most tweeted journalist at each outlet. She has received media awards from the Newswoman's Club of New York for the Front Page Awards for Lifetime Achievement, Women's Media Center, the National Action Network, and the National Association of Black Journalists, the NABJ. And her work has been nominated for an Emmy Award, a GLAAD Media Award, and 2 NAACP Image Awards. And so just an incredible voice, a shero of ours on this show. And, we uplift each other. And so, again, do us a favor. Be sure to follow Joy Ann Reid. Okay. Now, the Honorable Judge Cody Williams. I gave a very brief introduction. And you've been on the show before, yes, but it's been some time. For the benefit of our listeners, talk a little bit about, your journey so that they know who they'll be listening to this time and sort of what qualifies you to have this conversation today.
Well, first, before I get into me, when you speak about Ms. Reid and the fact that her show is lost, I need your listeners, I need you guys to recognize that this could be a pattern that many of those loud, outspoken voices who were more liberal than the conservative mindset that we have nationally now and even regionally, if not for you and your show and shows like yours, if not for other journalists who are African American who raise the point in spite of the backlash and the risk of their jobs, we won't have that voice. And so it's very important that not only do we celebrate, but that we support her in her next gyration. She's not going to go away.
Yeah.
You will see her again. And there are people that we want to make sure we continue to stay vigilant about.
Sure.
That we don't let them be railroaded because of their voice against what could be considered a very oppressive regime.
Sure, absolutely.
More than there are the opportunity to say those things in different venues.
Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to put that out.
Yes, I'm glad you did.
I don't mind. But first and foremost, I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
And basically from high school, I went to college on a basketball scholarship at the University of Oklahoma. Did my 4 years there, graduated with a finance degree from Oklahoma University, came back to Arizona, worked in banking and in tech, and then finally in the city of Phoenix, I was the equal opportunity director at that time, before I had an opportunity to run for city council. And in that time frame, I got a master's at Arizona State University in business administration and another one at the John F. Kennedy School at Harvard in state and local government.
Okay.
So a lot of information, don't use but maybe 20% of it
Sure,
today.
that's how it goes.
but was prepared to have an opportunity to run for office.
Okay.
And I ran for city council. I became the third African American in the city of Phoenix to be a city council person, and did that for 8 years. After those 8 years, I became the president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Black Chamber of Commerce. Did that for 4.5 years before I was appointed to the position of Justice of the Peace, and subsequently ran for 5 additional elections and retired from being a judge. Justice of the Peace is a judge in December of 2022. So I continue to spend time in courtrooms. I'll be in court all day tomorrow, sitting at the bench. But most of the time I get a chance to do what I'm doing here with you, speaking to schools. Been very active, as I normally am during the Black History Month, speaking to as many folks as I can. And it gives me a lot of background opportunities to find out what people are interested in.
Sure. What's
going on, what their questions are, and to try to expand their knowledge base as I expand mine.
Okay, fantastic. So let's, now that we understand who we're talking to and that you're well qualified, for the layman, again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of goings on politically right now, a lot of shaking up, so to speak. And for folks that aren't quite able to make heads or tails of it, first we'll start here. Explain what a city council member does, because there are a lot of people who've, since the last election, said, hey, you know what, this administration does not represent me and I need to get involved. Where can I get involved? And for a lot of people, that's just right there in their own community. And city council members, it might be more achievable than like senator or congressman. So what is a city council
That's
member?
A very good question, because for most people, the local politics are the most important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as school board, all the way up to the city council person, and even county supervisors in that respect. Most are elected. Some are called aldermen. Some are called council people. They have different, but they all represent the citizens of a particular jurisdiction, primarily a city. And there are two kinds of governments in most cities. One is called a strong mayor form of government. Okay. The other is called a city manager form of government. Okay. The distinction is let's take LA or New York, strong mayor governments. And what that means is that the city structure, all of its infrastructure of employees and work fall under the guidance of the mayor itself. And the mayor hires an administrator, chief of staff, whatever you want to call that person, and that person is responsible for hiring all of the department heads and all of the deputies and all of the individuals. The city council in that kind of government still may represent a district. They may represent an at-large, meaning they represent the entire city. Mm-hmm. But in doing so, they approve the mayor's budget. Okay. They approve some of the things that are brought by law in the three forms of government: the executive branch, the administrative, and judicial. Mm-hmm. And they separate those, making sure. But there are many cities that have their strong mayor that also covers their school district. So they may have a large school district that is run underneath the city of administrator who works for the mayor. Okay. The council manager form means that, like in Phoenix, and we're the largest city that has this form of government, where the mayor and the city council all vote on the same thing at the same time. Okay. And so if the mayor is on the losing side because they had 4 votes and the other side had 5, then that's how it works. And sometimes the mayor may be on the side with 6 people to 3. But the reality is that everything is brought to the entire body for discussion. Okay. And the only individuals that the mayor and council hire are the city manager and the chief justice of the municipal court. Okay. Again, separating those 3 branches of government. Okay. And so the city manager has to be much more conscious of making sure that all of the districts, every aspect of the city, receives the proper amount of resources. And say, for instance, if I'm a strong mayor and you're a council person and we don't get along, I have the ability, even though these are my citizens too, and as the mayor, I may give you less of a particular resource, let's say trash pickup, uncontained trash pickup. I may not send those I may say to my administrator, make sure you don't give council member Ja any of those opportunities. Send it all over to the other districts. Really? Whereas the city manager it could be fired by us. So if you felt that person was being disloyal or not giving your citizens the right type of response and services, sure, then you and 4 others could fire them, because you would have them, if 9 was the number. I'm just using 9 as an example. But if you and 4 other members of the council, even including the mayor or not, voted to fire the city manager, you could do that. Okay. But the city managers typically are much more conscious in that regard. They don't have a political issue to address. Sure. They're not trying to be reelected. They are staff people, and they want the staffs of all of the districts, the staff members that they represent, to represent all of the districts and all of the individuals who work there. Sure. So that's what and a city council member, I advocated as a city councilman, I advocated for change. I wanted to bring investment into the south side of the city of Phoenix, which was much maligned, considered to be very heavily crime-ridden, and no new investment. So I did things like bus tours, where I brought individuals who were investors and real estate people and city staff and bankers to my community to show them these areas. This is what you hear about. It's not accurately portrayed. See for yourself. Here's this beautiful area here. Have you ever seen this before? Mm-hmm. And many people were like, wow, we're blown away. I didn't know that it was like this. We just listened to what was on the TV and the media. And almost I did 15 of them in my 8-year, 2-year term, 2 4-year terms, 15 bus tours. Each tour, someone got off the bus, purchased some land, and developed it. Okay. And so that helps to bring property values up. Mm-hmm. My community was heavily African American and heavily Hispanic, as well as with a balance of Anglo, white people who lived in that area. So very diverse, very, very diverse community. And we were able to bring property values up, which of course brings wealth
into
those neighborhoods.
Sure.
We improved streets, we reduced crime, we stopped cruising, which immediately dropped crime, which was really, really a big deal. For us to do something that was very controversial, but it was also something that had gotten out of hand, and immediately the areas that we look at crime at, the statistical categories, you could see them all just dropping.
So how about this? I like your point where you said that that position, city council member, is a great position to be able to affect change in your day-to-day life, and I think that your story is kind of a testament to that. Now let's shift gears a bit here, because again, you're in a unique position to teach us about another side of the government. So talk to us about what is the role of a judge or a justice of the peace? And I know that that's a simple question, but just so that we have it out on the table.
Well, and I know you have listeners all around the country, and Arizona is one of the states that has within its constitution the ability to have justice of the peace as part of their judicial makeup.
Okay.
And so when you think about Arizona, we have 15 counties, and each one of those counties has a superior court system where the lead person is the chief justice of the superior court. So imagine there are 15 of those. Then you've got your various areas for family courts, you've got criminal courts, you've got lawsuits for property and all of those kinds of things. Well, as you move down, you get into what's called limited jurisdiction. And a city court like the city of Phoenix's court or Scottsdale or Glendale, if you have something, you get a speeding ticket in one of those jurisdictions, you show up for their courts. In Maricopa County, if DPS gives you a ticket or a county sheriff gives you a ticket, they are then brought to the justice of the peace.
Okay.
And in the state of Arizona, there are approximately 90 justice of the peace. Maricopa County has 26 justice of the peace. Each one of them has a particular area that they run in, a district, and I ran in the South Mountain district, and that's who I represented. And we handle about, in my court, we handled about 12,000 cases a year. And those cases dealt with anything from civil traffic related, criminal traffic, criminal misdemeanors. We had lawsuits under $10,000, small claims under $3,500. I did weddings, did over, in my 15 years, did about 6,000 weddings.
Nice.
And so of those 12,000, you would imagine in the course of a year that in the courtroom you saw about 1,000 to 1,500 people.
Okay.
Evictions really made the huge number, the largest number of people in court, whether that was physically in court or after COVID, a lot of it became virtual. And so regardless of that, you saw most of the people who were participating in court cases coming out of the justice system, justice of the peace system, where we're the only ones that deal with it. So the city of Phoenix doesn't deal with evictions. No other courts deal with evictions unless they exceed $10,000.
Got it.
Okay? And so that's what we did most of. We did orders of protection and injunctions against harassment. So we saw a lot of people for their first time ever having to be in court.
Okay. So talk to us about the difference between state judges and federal judges. Again, for people that don't know, talk about jurisdiction, talk about, who has more power or when certain people yield certain power. So just so that we, again, have a framework of that. Well,
and that's very, very, very good question. And it's a little more complicated than, maybe we have time to go into, but just to try to break it down simplistically, is the United States federal system judicially is what most states are modeled after. Okay. And once the states have their particular things, as long as the laws that they choose to pass and institute don't violate the federal interpretation of those laws, then they can have something different. For instance, someone is distributing drugs within the boundaries of the state of Arizona. They are arrested. They would then be prosecuted by either a city prosecutor or a county prosecutor or a state prosecutor, depends on what jurisdiction they were caught in. Big sting operation, it happens in Phoenix, then Phoenix would take the lead. But the county the county attorney and the attorney general, they also have similar abilities to weigh in if they chose to. But if that same person was distributing drugs within the state of Arizona and then drove to New Mexico and began to do the same thing, now they've gone over the state lines, and the two institutions, the state of New Mexico, state of Arizona, would have to give way to the fact that this person has interstate drug trafficking now as part of their issues. So they could be tried both at the federal level for going across and in the state of Arizona and New Mexico if they're caught doing it in both places. And they can be sentenced to time both at the federal level and then once they've completed that, can then be responsible for serving time in New Mexico and or Arizona. Now, there are many times when the jurisdictions get together and they say, hey, look, everybody's found him guilty or her guilty of whatever the issue is, but rather than bouncing around to 3 different jurisdictions, we'll just sentence him here and he will serve out his time concurrently. What you give him, what they give him, here all in the same state of Arizona.
Got it.
So when you think about the state, let's say you are driving in Arizona on a wide open freeway at 75 miles an hour. That's a state law. But if you go to California, that same speed limit may be 70.
It is 70.
It is.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, so trust me, I mention it educationally, not to say that I don't know that for sure. But at the same time, those are state laws. And so you can have similar issues. That's why in my court numerous times I had people come in and say, well, I'm from Maryland or I'm from Ohio, and that's not how we did it there. And you have to say, I'm very sorry, but you're in Arizona now, and the Arizona version of this law, particularly when it comes to eviction related matters. Arizona is a state that is viewed by many as being pro landlord, more so than it is pro tenant. Whereas in other places across the country, there are pro tenant laws. For instance, if you are supposed to fix my plumbing and you don't, if I'm in another state that's pro tenant, then I can withhold rent until you take care of it. Whereas in Arizona, if I ask you to fix it and you don't, I can't rent strike. I can't not give you money if I stay in that unit. But what I can do is I can take the money that I have, fix it and myself, and give you the receipts after I've told you. I've asked you for a week now. I've asked you for 2 weeks. I've got the records of my emails showing you these things, and you won't do it.
Sure.
As long as I get a licensed bonded contractor to fix it, then you have to accept that difference.
So how about this? You mentioned that my understanding, we just have about maybe a minute left, but just in brief, my understanding is that, and always has been, that the federal government, federal laws supersede the laws of the state, right? And you mentioned earlier too that states have their own constitutions based off of the federal modeled after. Okay, yes. So is it safe to say that the federal government and the federal constitution is indeed the law of the land, and state courts really are at the mercy of the decisions of the federal government?
In many respects, that's correct.
Okay.
But also in many respects, the federal government, in some cases, just may not care. For instance, legalizing marijuana. Marijuana is still illegal federally in the United States. Mm-hmm. But there are more states now who have legalized both recreational and medical use for marijuana than there are not. And most of them are on their way. I mean, literally 80% of the states have done that. But none of those states are fearing retribution from the federal government.
Okay.
Because the federal government is not acting on that.
Okay. Well, I need just a one-word answer. Yes. I know that might be tough, but we'll get back to it on the second part of the show. Is it possible, it's just for me, is it possible, given the state of the government, to see Trump overrule the Constitution? I recognize there are three branches, but people are worried about a third term. People are worried about the freedom of the press. Do you think that that's possible? Just a brief yes or no, and we'll break it down.
No.
No. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. I think that these questions are mission critical for a path forward, regardless of your affiliation. And I think that these questions are really important that they're answered for people who are very, very worried about their standing insofar as the government is concerned and their prospects. And so,
it should be.
Yeah, and I appreciate your time on that.